Hey, Author Nation. Welcome back. We're here in St. Pete Beach, and we're talking with Tara Ellis. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
So, you're writing Post-Apoc?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about, we'll go back in time, and you tell us a little bit about, even if it was maybe not writing Post-Apoc, like how you got started. And
Back when I was 6.
Hey, listen, Franklin started back when...
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's
back
kind
when
of...
there wasn't electric typewriters.
Oh, yeah. Okay, maybe I wasn't quite that long ago, but it's somewhat cliche. But I really did know from an extremely early age that as soon as I was old enough to read or even be read to, I was like, that's what I want to do. You know, I want to tell stories. And, fast forward 40 years or so. And I had already written a few manuscripts, but after, one failed attempt at being traditionally published, because at that point, I was only 20. And
so, kind of year, what era are we in?
That would have been like 1990.
Okay.
91, 92. And it involved finding a list of publishing houses or editors, and the addresses, printing out a manuscript on the dot matrix printer, and there was no such thing as the internet then, really. Yeah, we're talking old school.
Yeah.
You put it in the big manila envelope and send them off, and then get all of them back saying you need an agent, you need an agent, you need an agent, and then you pay $5,000 and we'll publish it for you. That was even a thing way back then too. So I literally, after being beaten down and discouraged, I put that manuscript in a shoebox and put it in the closet. And fast forward almost 20 years from there, I was going through some changes with work. I'd been a firefighter, EMT, 911 dispatcher for a while, and ended up having a shoulder surgery that kind of made me, I was forced to redefine kind of myself and, who was I aside from a mom of 2 kids and a firefighter. So that's really how I identified for a while. And I went back to what I'd always gone back to and what I loved, and that was writing. And I had a couple of unfinished manuscripts that I pulled out, and I, started working on them. And that was when I discovered self-publishing. This would have been, I think, late 2013.
Oh, so you were in early.
Yeah, and the first platform I went on with, the very first book I finished, which was, I pulled that old shoebox off the shelf and dusted off that manuscript and rewrote it, but it was still the same story, just a little bit better, I hope. And that was middle grade mystery.
Okay.
And it was along the same vein as Nancy Drew, Trixie Belden. And my next book after that was young adult sci-fi, somewhat post-apocalyptic, a dystopian. And Hunger Games had been popular a few years before that. And it got me to wanting to challenge myself and try first person, which was challenging. But it was fun. I enjoyed it. And I wrote a trilogy with that. And those first 2 books, I can't even remember the name of the publishing platform that I put that first one on, but I quickly discovered Amazon they had just started with their platform. And so I put my books up, and I sold a few, and went through the same process that, to this day, new authors still go through, but I think it was even more so back then because all of it was so new.
Oh, yeah.
Covers and editing and formatting and thinking you can do it yourself and finding out, oh, no, I can't. But it was a process, and it was a learning process that, I enjoyed all of it. I still do my own formatting on my self-published books. The other stuff, no. But I also do photography. So on some of my covers, my middle grade mystery series, I now have 13 books in that. And the young adult trilogy, I incorporated photographs that I took of the models, because I can visualize a cover concept, and I get very specific. My cover designers can back that up. I get it kind of stuck in my head, and I can visualize it. I just don't have the talent, to put it together professionally.
Nor is it probably the best use of your time.
Right, exactly. And so I found a designer back then that could, take those photos and incorporate them to create the covers that I wanted. And that's a lot of fun. I enjoy the process, but absolutely, it comes down to the writing and learning to delegate that time. And so for 10 years, I've been learning that over and over again, and I'm still learning. That's what this weekend is about.
Yeah. So, as far as, we're here at NINC and spending time here, what is there something that you've come away? Here's a different question.
Yeah.
What did you come here hoping to learn?
Really, I think what it came down to is trying to figure out the best use of my time, what to focus on to create different money streams for myself, so that I'm not caught on a hamster wheel or not missing out on other opportunities. I tend to put my head down when I'm writing, and we all work differently, which is great. That's another kind of aspect of what being a self-published author is about. We get to pick that. But it can also become very muddled. The marketing, there's parts of it that I find fascinating and interesting, but honestly, I'm just lazy when it comes to it, because that's not where I want to spend my time. I want to focus more on the writing and the creating the stories, and I find it so frustrating and also scary, because I've been full-time for 4 years, which is amazing, but also scary. And because as a business, especially when it's your only income source, it gets a lot more serious.
Yeah.
And so, especially, I just finished my 51st book, and I've written in 10 genres, 11 genres, and I had been thinking that was a huge mistake for most of these 10 years, where I'm going to write in another genre. Just this past year, I think I wrote in 4 new genres, because I had just finished my third 6-book Post-Apocalyptic series, and which was an amazing opportunity, writing with Muonic Press, and that was my first published contract books that I had done, and it's what enabled me to go full time. But after taking 4 years, writing in one genre and just being head down, and it was amazing, and I've learned so much, but I just needed a break, a mental break. And I was moving at the same time, and, had a new grandchild and going through a bunch of others, life stuff. And so I was just at a point where, I've got these other story ideas that I've wanted to do, and mentally, that's what I need to do. And that also comes, I think, with not all of us automatically know how to recognize that in ourselves, and what will help us to keep pushing forward. Some of us think, I just have to keep going no matter what. And I think that's how you burn out.
For sure.
And so for me, it's taken a process and time and doing things over and over again and finding out what works for me mentally, and recognizing that in myself. Like, oh, okay, you need to take a break. Go on a hike. Go down to the water, or write something that's been on your mind and take a break from the moneymaker.
Sure.
That you can keep going.
Well, something I've been, project I'm kind of working on around creativity and understanding it. And last night, I don't know, I think you were going into toxic shock from your space cooties. So I don't know if you were here. I was talking to Franklin about this, the idea of some research that I just recently saw, and they basically, through doing functional MRIs and some different testing, that your default mode network, that your head, the kind of that autonomic system that runs when you're not thinking, when you're kind of letting your mind wander, that's what drives not only a lot of your behavior, right, but it is really tightly tied to novel reasoning. Right? So creativity, you coming up with an idea. So that's why you have the inspiration in the shower or on the walk, because you're doing some routine, like showering is something you've been doing hopefully your whole life, and and you do it pretty much the same way, and
yes,
right. So like your body gets into that space, and it's like, oh, the muses came. And it's like, well, it's just how you have to get your brain into that state.
Yeah.
Yet the industry doesn't say, hey, you need to figure out how to spend more time. Like, I asked Franklin what his thing was. He's like, well, I go in the shop and work.
Yeah.
Right? Which is kind of his routine thing. It's like, you're not going to pick up a productivity book and it say, go just
produce.
Yeah, it's always that. It's always get on the hamster wheel again. You gotta be, but it's like, no, if you're at that point of your creative cycle, right? Because these things are all cyclical, just like the sun.
Right.
It's got to catch those novel ideas, right?
Yeah.
But do you give yourself that time?
And that is key. Time management, mental health and management, and that's where we're all so different too. And you're not going to figure it out if you don't explore it and you don't allow yourself the time and the opportunity. And sometimes that's easier said than done. If you have young kids and work 3 jobs, obviously it's going to be a lot harder to find that. Maybe it's when you're commuting to work. Mm-hmm. My kids are grown. I have grandkids now, and so there's that. But my kids are grown, and I've got the ability to negotiate my own schedule. And so these last few years, when I went full time, I figured out a process that works for me. And I'm an extensive plotter. I think I mentioned back 10 years ago, I pulled out unfinished manuscripts. And that was the first thing I discovered was I'm a plotter. Not everybody is. But if I don't outline and I don't know where I'm going when I start, I'll get lost in the story. And, I can draw a line where that happens. If I'm reading something, I can tell when someone else gets lost too.
Yeah.
I can't go back and add things to make something else make sense later on. I can't do it. I extensively outline every string, every plot point, every hurdle. And so I can drop Easter eggs here and there, and then everything wraps up just nicely in my brain and on paper. And, it's got to be that way in order for me to successfully write it. And how that mental process works for me is I spend sometimes weeks plotting. One book was about a gamma ray burst, and I spent at least 2 weeks studying astrophysics because I wanted the science to be as accurate as possible. Even though it's sci-fi, I try to make everything as accurate as possible because that believability to me as a reader is what makes it scary. Oh man, this can happen. And I think it gives the reader faith in the writer as they're reading it, like, oh, they really sound like they know what they're talking about, so I'm going to really buy into this. Just for me, personally.
If folks have that, if they are knowledgeable in that, it makes it easier for them to stay in the story.
It does. I think so. And so, I came up with this process of research, the story idea and the, general outline of it, and then extensive research, which continues throughout the whole story, of course, because things come up. But in the beginning, I get the meat of it. And then each book. And then I do every chapter. And then before I write every chapter, I brainstorm it again on a hike. Usually it's always on a hike because I find, depends on what's going on in life, for how long it takes me for the calm to come. And normally I'll like work through whatever else is going on in my life. Mentally, I talk out loud a lot. Usually all by myself when I hike. And sometimes it'll be 1 or 2 or 3 miles in before I actually start taking my notebook out. And I literally, I have notebooks full of all of my brainstorming by the end of my series. And then it starts to come to me. And I'll usually do 1 to 3 chapters depending on what's going on. Or maybe it'll just be a scene and I literally, I'll write out what they're saying too.
Yeah.
And so when I'll go back and sit down, and I have 2x3 whiteboards spread around that I've.
Oh.
Yeah, I do. I guess it's similar to how screenwriters.
Yeah.
They brainstorm stuff. I'm very visual, and so one board I'll have the general outline, and then, if there's events that are happening, quite often I'll also have characters in different time zones, and so I'll have to keep track of what time it is and what place for which character and where they're at, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I'll have it written down in a notebook but I'll also keep pertinent things visual for me. And so I'll sit down with my brainstorming, and then I've also got my brainstorming board for that chapter that I'll sit down after I get back from my hike, and I'll put it all together on that board. And then I've got my chapter by chapter one over here to make sure that I'm keeping everything in order and at the right time and in the right place, and that I'm not missing important references before I even write that chapter. And then I'll usually go back and read the chapter before I do that one. So by the time I'm done, I've also like reread it and edited it so many times that it just needs like one final edit.
Oh, that's good.
But I rarely add more than, a sentence here or there, and no plot points are ever added in my, because I'll get confused. I'm easily confused.
Well, and given, that you were talking about your YA mystery, and when was it that you really started to do the post-apoc and really, you mentioned Muonic, and I know you got an upcoming deal I'd love to hear about. What was it that really got you to like double down on the post-apoc?
The post-apoc. Yeah. It was getting the contract with Muonic and writing with Mike. My young adult trilogy was sci-fi and, hit on apocalyptic and dystopian. But since then, after, several years after that, I continued writing in the middle grade mystery. I also write a cozy mystery series and young adult, spy thriller, and all this other, multiple genres, and even some picture books for kids. But, sci-fi has always been sci-fi and mystery, really at the core of what I really like to write. And it was on the 20 books page. Those connections that are made through there are key, have been key for me. And it's not like even one specific point. It's just, you connect the dots over the years between the multiple different things, and it's really fascinating how it's kind of all come together. But there was a general call out for, to apply to do some co-authoring. And even though I only had the one trilogy that would really maybe count as the sci-fi or apocalyptic, I'm like, I might as well. And obviously it worked out. Yeah. And, 18 books later.
Wow.
3 series, 18 books. And
all kind of similar world, or?
No, completely different.
Okay.
Yeah, I like to jump around a lot. Again, mentally, I know for me, in my headspace, it's got to be, something that's totally unique, from what I've done before. And in order to stay interested, and I have to be interested in what I'm writing about. And even though I love volcanology and seismology, and I'm surrounded by active volcanoes, even though I love that kind of stuff, I've shied away from writing an apocalyptic event based on a volcanic eruption as the central event, because I would find it just too dreary and depressing for me to spend all of my time in that for like a year writing about it, because there's no sun, it'd all be blocked out, and just I need to, at least some of the characters need to be in the mountains and or in the woods. And I need to be able to see the sky because, again, I'm so visual. I'm spending basically most of my time in that story in my head for 6 months to a year. So I can't find it too depressing.
But you're writing post-apoc.
Yeah, I like to say that the ending is hopeful. I might kill off a good portion of the world, but it's still hopeful. There's still hope. But yeah, the first one is about a gamma ray. The second one is a chain reaction of natural disasters triggered by a man-made disaster. And then the third one is based on a computer virus making a new AI quantum computer go rogue and destroy all technology. That's my favorite one. Yeah, it's I tell people if you like Jericho, then you would like After the Crash. I see it as a big Netflix series.
There you go.
Yeah.
So tell me about the Aethon deal, and if you can.
Yeah. I can tell a little bit, and I don't know how much I can tell, so I'm going to kind of hedge on the cautious side, because I don't have a date yet, a release date. I just finished the first book of 3. So like I said, I have 3 series with Muonic, 18 books, and I took a year to to move and to get some other stuff situated and to write these. I have an ongoing young adult dystopian trilogy. I've got the first 2 books done, and the third I'll finish next year after I get this project done. And then I also started a historical Western romance because, why not?
Why not?
And that story had been in my head for probably 3 years, and I'm like, okay, I've got to do this. And, I considered it I'm just going to put it out there because I want to and I can, and it's going to make me feel good, so why not? And it's making me the most money out of my self-published books.
Oh, wow.
And so I think, maybe there's something to be said in that where I just had fun with it, and, it pays off. And then I also did a young adult spy thriller because why not? And it's kind of it's an origin story for a romantic suspense thriller that I have under that same name, under Myers. And so I did those last year. And then I was looking again at actually, paying bills. And so I was considering another contract with Muonic because, I still love writing with them, and that's still a potential. But just looking at what's right for me.
Yeah.
At this time, and mentally, taking on another 6-book series. I had a story idea that didn't really quite go with their, what's the word? Fan base.
Okay.
Well,
it's real important to focus on.
It's especially when it's so carefully crafted. I mean, that's what makes those series so successful is the readers, they know what to expect and they love it. And so I had this other story idea for a post-apocalyptic series that was, again, it's like, write it, and so I had the opportunity to write that story idea in a 3-book series with Aethon Books. And it was very timely. And so I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And it kind of goes along too with at this time in my career, just having those different avenues.
Yeah.
And
so since you're, a couple questions. One, how many books a year, and then what's the decision process to decide whether you go with it self-published or to a publisher?
Right. So with this 3-book series, and of course that was one of the things on the plate for me as a consideration, I was going to write this series myself and just publish it myself because, it didn't quite go along with Muonic's fan base, and I only wanted to do 3 books. And so I was geared up to write it myself and publish it, but the only point I'd gotten to so far was the general concept. Mm-hmm. And that was when I had the opportunity to write with Aethon. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of all fell into place. And the one thing I've learned, that when something seems to just be like meant to be and really feels right, just go with it. Don't fight the process, allow it to happen. And so I was really excited for that opportunity. And the main reason why I did decide to go with the publisher instead of doing it myself is a couple of different reasons. Financial. Mm-hmm. To do it right, it takes money to put the books out there. And to have the chance to do that with this series on a scope that I wouldn't be able to do myself was exciting to me. Mm-hmm. And I love that they automatically do audiobooks because I've been seeing that really on the rise.
Well, it's for that genre, I think, for sure.
It is, yeah. The one audiobook that I have in a series, Flashpoint, has done extremely well. And so I'm excited about that, which was something that this week also has made obvious to me, also, for my backlist to focus on.
I mean, so of those, let's just unpacking this on the Post-Apoc series, how many books are there?
And the one I'm doing right now?
Well, the ones, so of the Post-Apoc books that you have, you've got, you said you had 18 with Muonic.
Right.
You've got these ones that aren't written yet that you're getting ready to roll out. Are there other ones?
Yeah, so I've got the 18 with Muonic, and then I would count the 5 that I've already written in young adult would classify, and plus the one that I'm going to write, and then the 3 that I'll do with Aethon.
Yeah.
So like, what is that? Over 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, like 26, 27 books, yeah.
And how many of those are in audio?
I narrated the first book of my Forgotten Origins trilogy myself years and years ago. That's out there. So of the 18 that I have with Muonic, the first 6 books in Flashpoint, those are in audio.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the 3 coming out with Aethon will be in audio.
Yeah. I
And
know
so
they understand audio well, so.
yeah, so I'm looking to I would love to get my other 2 sci-fi trilogies on audio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just, I think that if it's a matter of capital, there's, Kickstarter, especially if you're going to be the narrator, that's a pretty interesting opportunity to explore.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing it. The narrating is fun, the mastering part, not so much. I'm a perfectionist, especially with my own.
Yeah.
And so I spend a lot of time on the mastering. I mean, it sounds good, I think, but it's a lot of time.
Yeah, you might want to get an engineer.
Yes, definitely.
I think that, in that genre, post-apoc, you're really limiting yourself when you don't have audio, and the sooner you can get it, the better, just because there's such a big audience out there.
Right, yeah, and that's really something I've been exploring this week for all of them, including the books with Muonic. I'd love to, I think they do really well, and so yeah, it would be a lot of fun. Oh, and the other reason going with the publisher at this point too is just to bring in another fan base, because I know Aethon has a huge fan base too.
Yeah.
Of a different sort, and so I just think it's a good business move for me to pull in from as many fan bases as possible.
Yeah, and if to your kind of earlier point is knowing that certain audiences are with certain places. I know a few people that are publishers where they get a book, they sign a deal, and the books come in, and they're not necessarily what was pitched.
Right.
And when they read it, they're like, hey, this isn't going to work with our audience.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Like, we could let it go, and it's not going to be favorable. They're going
Right.
to, they have an expectation, and they're going to work it out through the therapy of reviews.
Yes, reviews.
Yeah. And it can be, I know of 2 or 3 specific situations where they're difficult conversations for the publisher and the author, but they're not saying it's a bad book. It's just like, you're going to send this into an audience that it's just not what they want.
Absolutely, and that's where, like with the story that I decided to write, outside of Muonic, and it's a matter of, the fan base expects, a certain type of story, and that's why they're successful.
Yeah.
And so it would be of no benefit to me either, to try to present a story to a fan base that, might not be as excited about that as they are about, another one. And so it's, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't work out well. It makes
Yeah.
it's pretty stressful.
Right.
Cool. So, have you kind of come to any decisions about like this path forward for yourself, or do you have the information that you need to make a decision?
I feel like I've gotten some really good information at this conference, and I know I'll get good information too at Author Nation conference, and so I'm looking at my backlist. I have been, over the last few months, been looking at my backlist, and thinking about, what to focus on to take advantage of it, because I've got so many books. I should be doing more with them, and I had seen them as a mistake to a certain degree, as far as writing in so many genres over the years and not focusing sooner.
Yeah.
But now as I'm talking to other people, and talking with like Spotify and Dreamscape and other IP work, and I think that there's a benefit, at least in my situation now, to having so many books in so many genres, and being able to do different things with them.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Well, my take on it is, if you ask me the question, what's your fastest path to success, it most likely would look like you pick a lane and stick in it, right? You hear that a lot. Like,
Yes.
And you would not be that person, right?
No.
So it doesn't mean it's wrong. It means there's trade-offs,
Right.
And those trade-offs tend to be things take longer because audiences build around brands, right? It's
Yes.
not just the pen name, but it's the series. And so now you've got 2 or 3 things baking in the oven instead of one.
Right.
It's not good or bad. It is. Just understand that and plan for it, right? And like maybe it's going to take you longer, more capital. But if the books are all better books because of that process, then that's the process for you. I have clients that, they write and they're very successful, and they're like crunch writers, right? There has to be like pressure, and there has to be a pre-order and all, and it came out of years and years of writing while they were working, right? And squeezing the stuff in.
Yes.
And all of a sudden they're full time and there's nothing else to do. What are they fill in all that other time going to conferences or traveling, or like, because it's the process. A lot of people that would kill them, but that's how they work. So I really have to honor the process. And if yours is kind of moving from thing to thing to get the ideas out of your head or cleanse the palate, whatever it is.
Yeah, but I think that's what is so unique and really cool about being an author, is that you can create that path yourself. And it's going to be different and unique for everyone. I mean, was my journey the fastest and the most successful? It's been 10 years, and I have a lot of books, and I am writing full time, and so I do want to acknowledge that. I have had that success, but it's definitely not the quickest way to get there, and I have not taken advantage of faster ways or in maybe more lucrative ways if I had done it differently early on. But like you said, everybody's story and journey is different. And so it's a matter of recognizing when you do have other opportunities and just kind of going for it. And that takes confidence, I think, to a certain degree, which can sometimes be really hard, no matter how many books you have.
Yeah, and the messaging in the marketplace is not congruent with reality. Like,
yes.
You should just happen. It's like, well, so
Yeah.
what you basically said to me was that it took you, of the 10 years your startup business of selling your stories to people, which are, of those 10 years, it took you 6 to get to where it could support you, right? It was probably profitable before that, but maybe not in the sense that it could, right?
Yeah.
Like there's very few startup businesses that do that.
And that's true. And I had a legitimate part-time income from it within a few years.
Yeah.
I was able to just go to work part-time and lived on my own. I've been on a single income now for over 8 years.
Yeah.
So, and that's hard for me to give myself credit. And I think that's hard for a lot of people. And to look at it and to kind of take a step back and acknowledge, I've done pretty good.
Yeah.
I need to acknowledge that and use that to kind of lift myself up to keep going. And I mean, and again, this is always cliche to say I'll always write no matter what, but it is true. I will always write, but the difference is going to be, will I always love to do it? Will I always find that same joy that I did 10 years ago when I'm crafting and telling a story? And I think that's one of the reasons also why 10 years later I've got this many books in that many genres and haven't really exploded in any one of them. I've been successful in Post-Apocalyptic, of course, but I mean, there's something to be said with just doing what's right for you, and I still enjoy to write. You know, I'm not burnt out. I could have burned myself out.
Yeah.
Very easily, and but I still love to write, and to me that's more important than the money. The monetary side of it as a business obviously has to be important, and I do have to deal with it. But I can say I love what I do.
Yeah.
Not many people can say that, and I don't want to lose that. So.
Yeah. Well, in another podcast, there was somebody, it's that you, and I can see it in the joy of that when you say that. Doesn't mean it's not hard. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like.
Oh, yeah.
But given a choice of what you want to work on, right? You get to work on something you love. As part of doing that, you have to have some other stuff that comes along with it.
You do.
Yeah.
I mean, I get excited when I talk about my stories and talk to people about them, and creating my own worlds, and I get to do that for a living. How cool is that?
Yeah.
But there is that business side. If I want to be able to keep putting my story out to the world, and having other people enjoy it, then I need to also face the reality of the business side of it and try to be smart. And so I'm just like right now, I'm kind of regrouping now that I've got this many books, and I see that. I'm probably missing opportunities of doing more with those books to get them out to more people, and maybe find success in in other things too, that I didn't think were possible, like my kids' books in libraries, through audio.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about the things that I've learned the last few days, and where it might go.
Cool.
Yeah.
So why don't you, before we wrap up here, why don't you tell folks where they might be able to find some of these books if they're interested?
So all of my work is on Amazon. All of my books, as of now, are in Kindle Unlimited. So if you subscribe to that, then you can read all my stuff for free. So I'm on Amazon under Tara Ellis, and all of my sci-fi, my post-apocalyptic, dystopian is all under Tara Ellis. And then under Tara Myers, I have my women's literature. So I've got a cozy mystery series, and I've got my historical Western romance series going, and I have a romantic suspense thriller. And I have to think about it as I say them. And then young adult spy thriller, which is the origin story for the romantic suspense. But all of my books have a mystery theme to them, and I talked about threads before, and I think that's kind of one of my signature things, is that regardless of whether it's sci-fi or cozy or young adult, there's always those multiple threads that come together at the end, and I love putting twists and turns, and even in my post-apocalyptic, especially after the crash, there's a lot of things you don't see coming. So, and I'm excited for my new one that's coming out, and I can't say too much about that yet. I don't have a release date, but it will be 3 books. It's very much character-driven, action, big thriller, and if you've been reading about the latest news for the Rogue Moon, that's very timely. So I'll leave it with that.
There you go. Leave them with a little suspense and curiosity.
Yeah.
Well, Tara, it was great having you on the show.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed being here.
All right. And we'll see you in November.
Yeah.
You're going to be on a panel.
I am. I'm going to be on the Post-Apocalyptic panel again this year, and really looking forward to it. It's always great to, get together with like minds and just talk and have fun.
Pretty cool panel of people.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll see you there.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.